The Mafia boss was supposed to fear nothing, but that was before a plus-size baker in a broken evening gown grabbed his collar in the middle of his own ballroom and whispered that someone was aiming at his head. Until that moment, Vivien Costa had only wanted 3 things from the night. She wanted her cake delivered in one piece. She wanted her invoice paid without some rich committee woman asking if exposure counted as partial compensation, and she wanted to get out of the Costa Hotel before anyone realized she had safety pinned the side of her dress because the zipper had given up on her body like a coward with teeth. The cake was ridiculous. There was no kinder word for it. 5 tiers, hand-painted gold leaves, vanilla bean sponge, raspberry filling, buttercream roses so delicate they had taken Vivien 2 full nights, and one very emotional argument with a piping bag. It was taller than some children, and heavier than most bad decisions. The charity gala committee had asked for elegant, classic, unforgettable, and then changed the flower color 3 times, the filling twice, and the delivery time once, because apparently rich people believed time was a suggestion, and bakers slept standing up in closets. Vivien did not sleep in closets. Vivien slept in a little apartment above her bakery with flour in her hair, a calculator beside her bed, and 3 alarms named "Wake Up," "Seriously Wake Up," and "Girl, the buttercream will not make itself." She owned Sweet Mouth Bakery on Bell Street, a narrow pink-fronted shop between a tailor and a pawn store, and she had built her business the hard way, one panic order at a time. Brides called her when their original cake collapsed. Hotels called her when celebrity clients demanded desserts that matched emotional moods. Event planners called her when their beautiful ideas turned into expensive fires. Vivien Costa fixed disasters. She fixed them with sugar, attitude, and a deep respect for deposits. Tonight, though, the disaster was starting to look personal. The service elevator shuddered between the 6th and 7th floors, and the cake tilted left with the slow, horrifying confidence of a rich man explaining something he did not understand. Vivien threw her whole body against the cart, one arm across the middle tier, one foot braced against the metal wall. A tiny white rose slid down the side like it had decided to end things. "No," Vivien whispered, pressing her cheek against chilled buttercream. "Do not embarrass me in front of criminals. We talked about this." Her phone buzzed in the pocket of her coat, which was folded over the lower handle of the cart. She twisted one hand behind her, grabbed it, and read the message from her assistant, Kayla. "I'm so sorry. I can't do this tonight. My anxiety is bad. Please don't hate me." Vivien stared at the screen. The elevator groaned. The cake sighed against her arm. "Oh, honey," Vivien muttered, closing her eyes. "I support mental health, but I hope your anxiety knows it owes me overtime." She texted back with one thumb. "Don't die. Drink water. We'll talk tomorrow." Then she shoved the phone into her pocket and pushed the cake upright with a sound that was half grunt, half prayer. Her dress pulled tight across her ribs. Something at the back gave a tiny, sharp snap. Vivien went still. The zipper had been weak all evening. She knew that. She had felt it threaten her while she bent into the delivery van. She had felt it complain while she dragged the cake ramp out by herself. She had even felt it whisper betrayal while the hotel valet stared at her like he had never seen a fat woman carry something expensive without apologizing for existing. But now the zipper had crossed from warning into open rebellion. She reached behind her back and felt the split. "Fantastic," she said to the cake. "You and I are both held together by frosting and lies." The elevator doors opened onto a private service hallway lined with dark wood, black marble, and staff members wearing expressions so polished they looked rented. 2 men in black suits turned toward her at the same time. They did not look like regular hotel security. Regular hotel security asked for delivery passes and pointed at freight doors. These men looked like they had opinions about where to bury people. One of them looked at Vivien's face, then at the cake, then at the small brass badge clipped to the pocket of her coat. Costa. His posture changed. The other guards saw it too. Vivien noticed because she noticed everything. People thought fat women were invisible until they wanted something from them, or wanted to blame them for blocking a doorway. Vivien had learned to read eyes before smiles, shoes before handshakes, and silence before apologies. "Evening," she said. "I have one extremely overpriced charity cake, one dead assistant, emotionally speaking, and about 6 minutes before the buttercream starts getting shiny. Where am I going?" The first guard blinked. "Miss Costa? That is what my taxes say." His gaze flicked toward the other guard. "We were not informed you were coming through service." "I was not informed the service elevator was auditioning for a haunted ship, so already we're all learning things." The second guard stepped aside quickly. Too quickly. "Of course. This way." Vivien narrowed her eyes. "You know I'm the baker, right?" The men exchanged another look. That was rarely a good sign. A young woman with a headset appeared around the corner, walking fast with a tablet pressed to her chest. "The cake needs to be in the ballroom before the silent auction begins. Chef Laurent is furious, Mrs. Bellamy is crying near the orchids, and Senator Griggs wants the vegetarian entree replaced with fish, which he says is not meat because it swims." Vivien pushed the cart forward. "Tell Senator Griggs I said fish have faces and feelings, but I'm not here to fight the ocean tonight." The woman stopped mid-step when she saw Vivien's badge. Her eyes widened. "Oh, Miss Costa." Vivien looked down at her own chest, then back up. "Why is everyone saying my name like I arrived in a prophecy?" The woman lowered her voice. "I'm sorry. I just didn't realize he had invited family." The hallway went strangely quiet. Vivien stared at her. "He?" she asked. The woman's face lost color. One of the guards coughed. The other suddenly became fascinated by the ceiling. Vivien slowly looked from one face to another. Then the pieces slid together with such terrible elegance that she almost laughed. Costa Hotel. Edmund Costa. Her own last name, which had once belonged to her grandfather, 3 laundromats, and a long line of women who yelled across kitchens in Portuguese and English without taking a breath. "Oh," Vivien said. "No, absolutely not. I am not that Costa." No one looked convinced. "I am Cake Costa," she said, tapping the cart. "He is Murder Hotel Costa. Different branches of the haunted tree." The woman made a small sound, like she was trying not to choke. Vivien rolled her eyes and kept moving. Great. Perfect. Love this for me. By the time she reached the ballroom, the rumor had already outrun her. It moved faster than the cart, faster than the staff, faster than common sense. It slipped through the hotel like perfume under a locked door. Heads turned before Vivien even entered the grand hall. Diamonds flashed. Champagne paused halfway to painted mouths. Men in tuxedos leaned toward one another and murmured behind hands. Women with sharp collarbones and sharper smiles looked Vivien up and down as if trying to decide which scandal she belonged to. The ballroom was beautiful in the way expensive places often were, all glitter and no warmth. Chandeliers hung like frozen rain. White flowers climbed gold pillars. A full orchestra played on a raised platform near the windows, where the city glowed beyond the glass. Every table held candles, silver, and little cards explaining how generous the guests would appear if they donated enough money before dessert. Vivien guided the cake through the side entrance and toward the display table. She felt the eyes on her back, on her dress, on the curve of her arms, on the place where the zipper had surrendered and the safety pins were fighting for their lives. She had been looked at like that before, like she was a mistake in the room, like somebody had forgotten to check the guest list for body size. She lifted her chin anyway. Let them look. She had piped 192 buttercream roses on 3 hours of sleep. She had carried this cake through traffic, rain, and a service elevator with suicidal tendencies. She had dealt with mothers of brides who believed beige had 7 emotional shades. A ballroom full of rich strangers was not going to be the thing that killed her. A woman in silver satin rushed toward her, smiling with too many teeth. "There you are." "Here I am," Vivien said. "And there is the cake. Please tell me that table has been leveled." The woman blinked. "I'm sorry?" "The table," Vivien said. "Has it been leveled? Because if that cake leans 1 inch, I will become a problem with earrings." A waiter stepped forward. The dessert table was moved closer to the east windows for photographs. Vivien stopped pushing. She stared at him. "Moved," she repeated. "Yes, ma'am. To the windows. Yes." In direct heat from stage lights and whatever dramatic nonsense those chandeliers are doing. The waiter's mouth opened. Nothing useful came out. Vivien turned to the woman in silver satin. "No." The woman laughed lightly. "It looks better there. Dead people look peaceful. That does not make the arrangement practical." A few nearby guests went quiet. Vivien leaned one hand on the cake cart. "This cake contains butter. Butter has boundaries. You want it near the stone pillar, away from the windows, away from the band, and away from any drunk man who thinks leaning is a personality." The woman's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who approved that placement?" "No," Vivien said, "but I know who will be paying for repairs when Tier 4 slides into a senator's lap." Behind her, a deep male voice said, "The east windows were restricted an hour ago." The room seemed to breathe in and hold it. Vivien closed her eyes for half a second. Of course the arrogant manager had arrived now. She turned. Then she forgot every rude thing she had prepared. The man standing behind her did not look like a manager. He looked like the owner of every silence in the room. He was tall, dressed in a black tuxedo, so perfect it seemed less worn than obeyed. His dark hair was brushed back from a face made of angles and patience and trouble. He had the kind of stillness that made movement around him seem nervous. 2 men stood behind him, not close enough to crowd him, but close enough to remind the world that he never walked alone. His eyes moved from Vivien's face to the cake, then to the broken line of her dress, then back to her face. Not with disgust, not with amusement, with attention. That was somehow worse. "You are standing in a security zone," he said. Vivien looked at the cake table, then at him. "Your security zone is blocking the dessert table." One of the men behind him shifted. The silver satin woman went pale. The man's expression did not change. "Do you know who I am?" Vivien glanced at the name embroidered on a nearby napkin, then at the giant gold letters above the charity banner, then back at him. "I'm going to make a wild guess and say you're Edmund Costa, unless the hotel has several dramatic men lurking near pastry." A faint flicker passed through his eyes. "And you are?" "Vivien Costa." The silence after that was so complete, the orchestra seemed far away. Edmund looked at the badge on her coat. Vivien pointed at it. "Before you get excited, no relation. My family's Costa comes with bakery debt and women who can insult you while feeding you. I assume yours comes with ports, marble, and people vanishing after meetings." Someone behind her made a strangled noise. Edmund's men stared at her as if she had walked barefoot across a minefield and complained about the landscaping. Edmund, however, only studied her. "People usually fear me before making jokes. People usually pay me before moving my cake." His mouth did not smile, not exactly, but something almost did. "You are the baker. I am the baker, the delivery team, the emergency repair crew, and emotionally, the last adult in this building." The woman in silver satin found her voice. "Mr. Costa, I can explain the confusion." "I am listening," Edmund said, though his eyes had not left Vivien. The woman swallowed. "The staff believed Miss Costa was connected to you." "I told them I was Cake Costa," Vivien said. Edmund's gaze sharpened slightly. "Cake Costa. It's a working title." He looked around the ballroom. Vivien followed his eyes. She saw what he saw, only a second later. The whispers had changed direction. People were no longer looking at the cake. They were looking at the 2 of them, together. the man who frightened the room, and the woman with his last name standing close enough to argue with him like she had rights. A camera flashed. Vivien turned toward it. A thin man near the auction display lowered his phone too late. He had sharp eyes, glossy shoes, and the smug little smile of someone who got paid to ruin breakfast. "Oh, come on," Vivien muttered. Edmund looked at one of his men. Tommy. The man on his right moved forward. The photographer lifted both hands. Public event. Charity gala. No laws broken. Vivien pointed at him. "You photographed me from a rude angle. That is spiritually illegal." The photographer smiled wider. "Miss Costa, are you attending tonight as family?" Vivien opened her mouth to correct him. Edmund spoke first. "Miss Costa is my guest." Vivien turned her head slowly. The room went electric. Her guest-shaped soul left her body, looked at Edmund, and considered violence. "You're what?" she asked softly. Edmund leaned closer, not enough to touch, but enough that the room leaned with him. "Walk with me. I have a cake. It will survive 30 seconds. You don't know what it's been through." His voice lowered. "Everyone in this room is watching us. Whose fault is that, Mr. My Guest? I need them distracted." "Wonderful. Hire a magician. I will double your payment." Vivien stopped. The entire moral structure of her evening rearranged itself. "Double," she repeated. "Yes. For how long?" "One dance." She looked toward the cake, then toward the staring women near the champagne tower, the men with calculating eyes, the gossip columnist practically vibrating with delight. Then back at Edmund Costa, who looked like danger wrapped in expensive wool and poor communication skills. "One dance," she said. "Double payment. Written confirmation." Edmund held out his hand. "Tommy." Tommy produced a phone instantly. Vivien squinted. Did he just appear with a contract app? He is efficient. I respect that. A message hit her phone a few seconds later. Vivien checked it, read the payment amendment, and raised one eyebrow. "You added a non-disclosure clause." "You noticed." I read contracts. I also read faces, menus, invoices, and women who pretend they're not judging my arms. Edmund glanced toward the women near the champagne tower. Their eyes dropped all at once. "Useful skill," he said. "Expensive skill." The orchestra shifted into a slow song, deep and elegant, the kind of music that expected people to have secrets. Edmund offered his hand again. Vivien looked at it. His hand was broad, steady, pale at the knuckles, with a faint scar crossing one finger. It was a hand that had signed hotel deals, held weapons, lifted glasses in rooms where men decided who lived comfortably and who disappeared quietly. It was not the kind of hand Vivien usually trusted near cake or her waist. Still, the money was real, and the room was waiting. She placed her hand in his. The first surprise was that he did not grip too hard. Powerful men often did that. They turned a handshake, a dance, even a doorway into a small test of control. Edmund did not. His fingers closed around hers with exact pressure, enough to guide, not enough to trap. His other hand settled at her back, carefully above the broken zipper, almost as if he had noticed the damage and chosen not to make her more uncomfortable. Vivien hated that she noticed that. He led her onto the dance floor. The whispers followed. She expected him to drag her into some stiff display of ownership. Instead, he waited until she found the rhythm. That annoyed her even more, because good manners from a dangerous man felt like a trick. "You dance well," he said. "You sound surprised." "I am." "Careful. I charge extra for insults during fake romance." His gaze moved over her face. "This is not romance." "I know. Romance would include snacks and better lighting." A real smile almost touched his mouth then. It appeared and vanished so quickly she wondered if she had imagined it. They turned beneath the chandeliers. The ballroom blurred around them, all gold and white and watching eyes. Edmund moved with calm precision, each step controlled, each shift of weight sure. Vivien let him lead for exactly 6 seconds, then corrected his angle because he was guiding her too close to the heat lamps. His brow lifted. "You are resisting. I'm preventing your very expensive event from becoming a buttercream crime scene. You agreed to dance. I did not agree to ignore physics." He glanced past her toward the cake. "You care deeply about dessert. I care deeply about payment, craftsmanship, and not letting a 5-tier structure melt because rich people think windows are romantic." His hand adjusted at her back, turning them away from the stage lights. He had listened. That was the second surprise. The first had been his restraint. The second was worse. Around them, the room kept guessing. Vivien could feel it in every glance. People were trying to make her make sense. Secret wife, hidden fiancé, woman from the old country, scandal, leverage, weakness, maybe even threat. Their confusion wrapped around her like smoke, and Edmund was looking at her like he did not mind it. No, not mind, like he found it useful. "So I'm a distraction," she said. "Yes, from what?" His eyes moved past her shoulder. "Men who came here smiling with knives under their tongues. That is a very dramatic way to describe donors. Some of them are donors. And the rest? Problems waiting for timing." Vivien swallowed before she could stop herself. The soft fear that had been playing at the edge of the evening moved closer. It was one thing to joke about criminals from behind a cake cart. It was another thing to spin in the arms of one while realizing half the room might be carrying grudges old enough to have names. "You do this often?" she asked. "Dance with bakers? Pretend everything is fine while people want you dead?" His expression cooled into something older. Yes. The answer was too simple. Too honest. It slipped under her humor and touched something she had not meant to offer. "That sounds exhausting," she said. He looked at her sharply. Maybe people asked Edmund Costa if he was dangerous. Maybe they asked if rumors were true, if deals were closed, if enemies had been handled. Maybe no one asked if being feared all the time made a person tired. The song deepened. The violins rose. For one small second, the room seemed to fall away. Then Vivien saw the red dot. It appeared on Edmund's chest, tiny and bright against the black fabric of his tuxedo. At first, she thought it was a reflection. The chandeliers were everywhere, dripping light onto silverware and glass. Then the dot moved, slowly, deliberately. It climbed from his chest to his collar. Vivien's smile stayed in place, because every eye in the ballroom was still watching her. Her hand tightened on Edmund's shoulder. He felt it at once. "What is it?" he asked, barely moving his mouth. The dot touched the hollow of his throat. Vivien's heart dropped so fast the music seemed to tilt. She did not look toward the windows. She wanted to. Every instinct screamed at her to find the source, to point, to yell, to run. But the ballroom was packed with armed men who smiled like gentlemen and stood like loaded guns. If she screamed sniper, panic would not just spread, it would explode. Men would reach under jackets. Guards would fire at shadows. Someone innocent would go down before anyone understood what had happened. The dot slid higher, toward his jaw, toward his face. Vivien breathed in. She had fixed falling cakes, ruined weddings, kitchen floods, drunk bridesmaids, cheating grooms, allergic flower girls, and one banquet where a senator's wife had thrown shrimp at a harpist. She had not, to be clear, fixed assassination attempts. But disasters had a language, and the first rule was always the same. Do not let the room see you panic. She stepped closer to Edmund, so close her broken zipper brushed his hand. Then she grabbed the front of his tuxedo, pulled him down like she was about to kiss him, and whispered against his ear. "Dance like you are madly in love with me. There is a red dot on your forehead." For half a second, Edmund Costa froze. Not from fear, from surprise. Vivien felt it in his body, the brief stillness of a man whose world had never included being protected by a civilian baker with glass-colored earrings and frosting near her sleeve. Then his hand flattened against her back, firm but careful, and his body changed. He understood. The dot touched his cheekbone. Vivien shifted left, putting her shoulder between the window and his face. Edmund turned with her, smooth enough that the room sighed as if the dance had become more intimate. He lowered his head toward hers. To anyone watching, it looked romantic. To Vivien, it felt like standing in front of a storm and pretending it was weather. "Where?" he murmured. "Across the street, I think. High window. Don't look. I was not going to." "You look like the type who likes to look at bullets before they arrive." His breath changed. Almost a laugh. Almost. "We need cover," he said. "Stone pillar near the cake. Distance? 4 turns, maybe 5 if you stop stepping like a funeral statue." His fingers tightened once. "Lead." "Excuse me, you saw it first." Vivien almost forgot there was a sniper because Edmund Costa, terrifying hotel owner, rumored murderer, man with half the ballroom lowering their voices around him, had just told her to lead. So she did. She turned them hard, almost stumbling into him. The room gasped softly, mistaking danger for passion. Edmund followed instantly, catching her weight, turning the stumble into a dip so elegant that applause fluttered from one corner of the ballroom. Vivien's heart hammered against her ribs. The red dot slipped off his face, flashed across her shoulder, vanished, then returned to his collar as they rose. "Nope," she whispered. "Rude." Edmund's mouth brushed near her temple. "You are arguing with the sniper? I argue with everyone." They moved again. 1 turn. 2. Vivien kept her body between Edmund and the windows, feeling the aim chase them like a hot insect. Her feet remembered the music, even as her mind counted space. The pillar stood near the cake display, wide enough to hide them both if they reached it. Too far, too close. Everything felt impossible and slow. Guests watched with bright, hungry eyes. The gossip columnist lifted his phone again. Vivien gave him a smile so sharp he lowered it. Edmund guided her into another turn. The red dot skipped across his temple. "Faster," she breathed. "That would look suspicious. You getting shot will also raise questions." This time the laugh reached his chest. Quiet, unbelievable, alive for less than a second. Then the red dot steadied in the center of his forehead. Vivien stopped thinking. She shoved him, hard. Edmund moved with her, letting the force carry him behind the stone pillar as she slammed into his chest. His arm closed around her waist and pulled her in with him. At the same instant, the window cracked with a sound too small for what it meant. The bullet missed his head by inches. It hit the champagne tower beside the cake. Crystal exploded. Champagne burst outward in a glittering wave. Glass rained over white roses. Sugar flowers shattered. Guests screamed once, then swallowed the sound as armed men turned everywhere at the same time. The orchestra died mid-note. A silver tray crashed to the floor. For one breath, the whole ballroom stood perfectly still inside the shock. Vivien was pressed against Edmund Costa behind the pillar, one hand twisted in his lapel, her cheek against his shoulder, her heart beating like it wanted out of her body. He looked down at her. She looked past him at the champagne dripping down the side of her cake. Then, because fear had nowhere else to go, she muttered, "That had better not come out of my deposit." Edmund stared at her. Then he laughed. Not loudly, not for the room, just once, low and surprised, as if the sound had escaped from some locked place inside him before he could stop it. Vivien felt it against her hand. The most feared man in the Costa Hotel, the man everyone in the ballroom had been studying like weather before a hurricane, was laughing because she had nearly died and still cared about cake pricing. Tommy appeared at the edge of the pillar with a gun hidden beneath his jacket. His eyes scanned Edmund first, then Vivien. "Boss, find the shooter," Edmund said, already moving. "No panic." Tommy looked toward the room, where guests had begun whispering, shivering, reaching for phones, reaching for weapons, reaching for one another. Too late for none. "Then give them another story." Tommy nodded once and moved away. A second later, his voice cut through the ballroom, calm and loud. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain where you are. A catering glass structure has failed near the dessert display. There is no threat. Staff will assist you." Vivien slowly turned her head toward Edmund. "A catering glass structure? People believe confident lies faster than nervous truth. That is disturbingly useful." "Yes." The orchestra started again, weak at first, then stronger. The bandleader looked as though he had seen God and been asked to play through it. Waiters moved in fast with towels and practiced smiles. Security shifted around the windows without seeming to. The room resumed breathing, but not normally, not fully. Fear had entered wearing perfume, and no amount of music could push it out. Edmund's hand was still at Vivien's waist. He seemed to realize it at the same time she did. He let go, not abruptly, carefully. That bothered her more than it should have. "You are hurt?" he asked. Vivien looked down at herself. Her dress had survived by sheer spite. Her arms had a few tiny glass scratches. Her hair probably looked like a bakery had fought a chandelier and lost. "My dignity has been in worse condition." "That is not an answer. I'm fine." His eyes moved over her face, then down to her hands. They were shaking. Vivien curled them into fists before he could say anything. Edmund noticed anyway. Of course he did. His voice lowered. "You put yourself between me and a bullet." "I put myself between you and an unpaid invoice." Vivien. The way he said her name made her go still. Not Miss Costa, not Baker. Vivien. Like he had found the real one under the jokes and was looking directly at her. She did not like that. She liked it even less because she liked it. "I didn't have time to hold a committee meeting," she said. "You were in the way of my continued financial stability. No one has ever done that for me. Sent an invoice, protected me." The quiet after that was different from the silence in the room. Smaller, stranger. It lived only between them. Vivien looked away first. Across the ballroom, the guests were pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. The gossip columnist was trapped between two of Tommy's men and looked much less pleased with his career. The woman in silver satin was whispering fast into someone's ear. Near the bar, a heavy-set older man ate calmly from a plate of pasta, as if bullets were a normal part of charity. A younger man in a navy tuxedo shouted at a waiter about whiskey while chaos glimmered behind him. And near the back exit, one man laughed too loudly. Vivien saw him before she knew why she was seeing him. He was broad, polished and red-faced under expensive lighting. His smile kept arriving a second too late. His wife stood beside him in emerald green, one hand locked around her little black purse so tightly her knuckles had gone white. The man laughed again. Nobody had said anything funny. Vivien's eyes narrowed. Edmund followed her gaze. "What? I don't know yet. That is not comforting. Neither is being used as a bullet shield. But here we are." He leaned closer. "What do you see?" Vivien watched the man in the back. His shoulders were relaxed, but his feet were pointed toward the exit. His glass was full, though he kept pretending to drink. His wife kept looking at the service hallway. Not the broken champagne, not Edmund, the hallway. Vivien had seen that look before, on groomsmen who had lost rings, on mothers who had changed seating charts and blamed staff, on vendors who knew the generator was going to fail and hoped someone else would discover it first. It was the look of a person waiting to run. "I see someone who knew the disaster was coming," she said. Edmund's face changed. Not much. Enough. The almost laughter disappeared. The man beside her became cold in a way that made the air around him feel sharper. "Name," he said. "I was hoping you'd know. I'm new to the attempted murder guest list." "Carmine Rossetti," Edmund said. "Dock partner. Long-time problem." Vivien looked at the man again. Carmine Rossetti was laughing with his whole mouth and none of his eyes. His wife turned slightly. For half a second, her gaze met Vivien's. Then Isabella Rossetti looked away too quickly. Vivien felt the old familiar click inside her mind. The same click that came when a bride said she loved the cake while staring at the florist. The same click that came when a client claimed the check had been mailed before Vivien had even mentioned payment. A lie had a rhythm. Fear had one too. And guilt, no matter how expensive the dress, never stood naturally. Vivien brushed a shard of glass from her hair. Edmund watched the movement, his eyes dark and unreadable. "You should leave," he said. She looked at him. "The cake has not been served. You nearly died. And yet, tragically, I remain self-employed. This is not your world." "No," Vivien said, looking across the ballroom at Carmine's wife. "But someone made it my problem when they fired a bullet through my dessert display." Edmund held her gaze for a long moment. Maybe he expected fear, maybe obedience, maybe tears, maybe the kind of trembling gratitude powerful men were used to receiving when they survived danger and decided who else was allowed to survive beside them. Vivien gave him none of that. She gave him glass in her hair, frosting on one sleeve, a ripped zipper, a steady stare, and the quiet fury of a woman who had been underestimated one time too many. At last, Edmund Costa tilted his head slightly, as if something in the night had rearranged itself, and he had decided not to fight it yet. "Then stay close," he said. Vivien glanced at the ruined champagne tower, the watching guests, the nervous staff, and the 5-tier cake that had survived everything except rich people and gunfire. "Fine," she said. "But if anyone else shoots near my buttercream, I'm charging triple." Edmund looked at her for one long second, and something like amusement touched the hard edge of his mouth, but it did not reach his eyes. His eyes had gone somewhere colder, somewhere quiet and dangerous, the way the sea might look right before it pulled a ship under. Around them, the gala pretended to continue. The orchestra played a gentle waltz that now sounded almost cruel. Waiters swept broken glass into silver pans. Guests lifted champagne glasses with hands that shook just enough to betray them. The charity banners still hung from the walls, bright and hopeful, as if hope had not just been shot through from a building across the street. Vivien stood beside the ruined champagne tower with glass in her curls, a loose safety pin threatening to give up near her ribs, and a 5-tier cake wearing tiny splashes of champagne like it had survived a very fancy street fight. She should have been afraid. She was afraid. Her knees knew it. Her stomach knew it. Even her hands knew it, because they would not stop trembling no matter how hard she curled them. But fear, Vivien had learned, was not always a stop sign. Sometimes fear was just the body's dramatic way of saying, "Pay attention, stupid. Something important is happening." Edmund's security men moved through the ballroom without running. That made them more frightening. They checked windows, doors, phones, jackets, faces. Tommy gave quiet orders near the east wall, while 2 guards blocked the gossip columnist with polite smiles that looked almost painful. The columnist tried to laugh, tried to act offended, tried to say something about public interest and freedom of the press, but one look from Tommy made his voice shrink. Vivien watched all of it, while pretending to fix a crooked sugar rose on the cake. Her fingers moved carefully. Her eyes did not. She scanned the room the way she scanned event disasters, not for what people said, but for what they failed to hide. Rich people loved to believe money made them mysterious. It did not. Money only gave them better fabric to sweat through. The old man near the pasta station was still eating. He was short, silver-haired, and dressed in a black tuxedo with an old red pocket square. 3 guards stood behind him, calm but ready. His face was wrinkled and soft around the mouth, but his eyes were awake. He did not look toward the exits. He did not whisper into a phone. He did not touch the inside of his jacket. He simply twirled pasta around his fork, as if assassination attempts were bad manners but not worth wasting dinner over. Vivien decided he was either innocent or too old to care if he died tonight. Either way, he was not the one about to run. Near the bar, the younger man in the navy tuxedo was still arguing about whiskey. He had thick, dark hair, a square jaw, and the wounded pride of a man who expected alcohol to respect him. "No, not that one," he snapped at the bartender. "The 12-year bottle, the one from the private shelf." "Do I look like I came here for hotel wedding whiskey?" His irritation was too real to be useful. Vivien had watched plenty of men fake anger, but this man's whole body was involved. His shoulders were tense, his ears were red, and he looked personally betrayed by the quality of the pour. He was annoyed, not scared, maybe dangerous, probably exhausting, but not tonight's main problem. Then there was Carmine Rossetti. Carmine stood near the back of the room, with his wife half hidden at his side. He lifted a glass and laughed again at something one of his men said. The laugh was big, round, and false. It landed too loud in the wrong places. His eyes moved over the ballroom in little cuts. Window, door, Edmund, Tommy, door again. His wife Isabella stayed close to him, her emerald dress glowing under the gold lights, one hand wrapped around her purse. She was beautiful, in a sharp, expensive way, with pale skin, dark red lipstick, and hair pinned so smoothly it looked polished. But she kept pressing her thumb against the clasp of the purse. Open, close, open, close. Not all the way, just enough to know it was there. Vivien leaned closer to Edmund without looking at him. "The pasta grandfather is not it." Edmund followed her gaze. "Dominic Basso. That sounds like a man who owns both a restaurant and a cemetery. He owns more than that. Well, he's too calm. If he planned this, his people would be ready to move. They're not. They're bored and judging the food." Edmund's eyes shifted toward the bar. "Leo, the whiskey prince? No, he's mad about the wrong thing. If he was covering attempted murder, he wouldn't be spending this much emotional energy on a bad pour." "That is my underboss." Vivien glanced at him. "That is unfortunate for both of you." This time, Edmund almost smiled. Then his gaze returned to Carmine. "And Rossetti. Rossetti is laughing like a man who rehearsed confidence in the mirror and forgot how humans do it. His wife is holding that purse like it contains either a gun, a passport, or a raccoon. And both of them keep looking toward the service hallway." Edmund was silent for a moment. "You learned this from cakes?" "I learned this from brides," Vivien said. "Cakes just give people a reason to lie near me." Tommy returned before Edmund could answer. "No shooter found yet. Building across the street is being cleared. We found an open office window on the 21st floor. Fresh brass on the floor. Shooter was gone before we crossed over." "Inside help," Edmund said. "Yes." Vivien wiped buttercream from her thumb with a napkin. "The sniper knew when you'd be on the dance floor." Tommy looked at her for the first time like she was not just a complication in heels. "Yes, and knew which window would be open enough for a shot." "Yes, and knew your security would be spread wide because everyone in this room is either rich, armed, corrupt, or all three." Tommy's eyebrows rose slightly. Edmund's voice was quiet. "Continue." Vivien looked toward Carmine again. "So either the person who planned this has access to your hotel security schedule, your gala timing, your dance floor visibility, or somebody gave it to him." "Many people had the schedule," Tommy said. "Then look for the person acting like the plan failed but the night isn't over." Tommy glanced toward Carmine and Isabella. Vivien did not miss it. Edmund saw her notice. "You are enjoying this too much." "I am not enjoying anything. I am traumatized and underpaid. I doubled your payment." A bullet changed the market. Before Edmund could respond, Isabella Rossetti kissed Carmine's cheek, said something into his ear, and slipped away from him with smooth, careful steps. She did not go toward the main doors. She went toward the women's lounge tucked behind the south hallway, the one with gold-lettered signs and two guards who stepped aside because pretty women in emerald gowns were rarely treated like threats until it was too late. Vivien watched her disappear. "No," Edmund said. She blinked at him. "I didn't say anything. You thought it loudly. I was thinking many things. You are not following her." Vivien touched the side of her dress where the safety pin still held. "Do you always tell women what they are not doing, when they are about to walk toward danger?" Yes. How has that worked for you socially? His jaw tightened. Vivien. There it was again, her name in his voice, low, direct, heavier than it should have been. It made some foolish part of her want to listen. The rest of her had bills, pride, and a deep dislike of being ordered around by men who looked good in black. She knows something, Vivien said. And if one of your guards follows her into the women's lounge, every guest in here notices. If I go, I'm just the weird Costa woman fixing her dress. You are not trained for this. I am trained to survive bridal parties, unpaid vendors, and women named Pamela who use the phrase simple changes while holding 6 pages of notes. I can handle a bathroom conversation. She may have a weapon. Most rich women do. Sometimes it's just emotional. Edmund stepped closer. This is not a joke. Vivien looked up at him, and for once she let the fear show. Just a little. Just enough that he could not mistake her courage for stupidity. I know. I saw the dot too. That stopped him. The words settled between them, soft and awful. Edmund Costa was used to men trying to kill him. Vivien was not used to being the nearest living thing between a bullet and a man's skull. She could still feel the moment in her body. The music, the heat of his jacket under her fingers, the tiny red light climbing toward his face. She would feel it later too, she knew. In bed, in silence. After the jokes ran out, Edmund's expression shifted. Not softer exactly, more careful. If anything feels wrong, he said, you leave. If anything feels wrong, I will become extremely loud. Tommy will be outside the hall. Tell Tommy not to look like he's guarding a crime scene. I do not think Tommy knows how to look like anything else. Then give him a tray. Tommy, who had been listening, stared at her. A tray? Yes. Stand near the hall with appetizers. Nobody questions a man with appetizers. Tommy looked at Edmund. Edmund looked at Tommy. A few seconds later, the most intimidating security chief Vivien had ever seen was handed a silver tray of tiny crab cakes by a confused waiter. He held it like evidence. Vivien patted his arm as she passed. Beautiful. Very natural. Try blinking. The women's lounge was almost too pretty for what happened inside it. Pale marble counters, gold mirrors, velvet chairs, little glass bowls of mints, soft pink lighting that made everyone look like they had fewer problems and better sleep. Vivien entered with one hand on the side of her dress and the other holding a napkin full of glass shards she had pretended to remove from her hair. Isabella stood at the far sink, looking into the mirror while she touched up her lipstick. Her purse sat open beside her. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The music from the ballroom floated in faintly through the wall, soft and unreal. Isabella closed her lipstick with a gentle click. You should be careful wandering alone. Vivien walked to the counter and began picking glass from her curls. I was about to say the same thing, but yours sounded more threatening, so congratulations. Isabella's eyes met hers in the mirror. You are funny. I'm tired. People confuse the two. You really are not what I expected. Let me guess. Taller? Thinner? Quiet enough to fit whatever rumor you were hoping was true? A small smile curved Isabella's mouth. You are very confident for someone being tolerated. Vivien paused with a piece of glass between her fingers. There it is. What? That thing women like you do when you want to insult my body but still pretend you have manners. Isabella turned from the mirror. I did not mention your body. No, you just walked around it slowly, like a museum exhibit you didn't enjoy. The smile faded a little. Vivien dropped the glass into the napkin. Listen, I'm sure you're very good at making other women feel small, but I own mirrors. I know what I look like, and I still got your husband's boss to pay me double and dance with me in front of everyone, so tonight may not be your strongest evidence. Isabella's eyes hardened. You think Edmund Costa is amused by you. That does not mean you matter. No, but it does mean I'm having a more interesting night than planned. You should leave while you can. People keep saying that. It's starting to feel less like advice and more like branding. Isabella took one step closer. The room seemed to cool around her. You have no idea what kind of man he is. Vivien leaned one hip against the counter. I know he pays fast, dances well, and has enemies with terrible aim. Isabella's face changed. Tiny, fast. But there, Vivien felt the click again. She kept her voice light. Shame about the champagne tower. You should have seen it. Very dramatic. Glass everywhere. Isabella recovered quickly. Everyone saw it. Not everyone. You had already turned toward the hallway before it broke. I was frightened. Before the accident, the sound startled me. Vivien tilted her head. Which sound? Isabella stared at her. Vivien smiled. The tower falling? The window cracking? The bullet hitting glass? The silence sharpened. Outside the lounge, footsteps passed and faded. Isabella's hand moved toward her purse. Vivien saw it. She did not think. Thinking was too slow. She grabbed the heavy glass soap dispenser from the counter and threw it. It hit Isabella's hand, just as the other woman pulled a small silver gun from the purse. The gun clattered across the marble. Isabella cursed and lunged. Vivien stepped into her instead of away, because people always expected fat women to move backward. She used her shoulder, her hip, her whole solid body, and slammed Isabella into the counter hard enough to shake the mirror. Isabella gasped. Vivien grabbed her wrist. You tried to shoot me in a bathroom. That is so tacky. Isabella twisted, sharper and stronger than she looked. Her nails scraped Vivien's arm. Vivien felt the sting and got angry in a clean, useful way. She shoved a velvet lounge chair with her foot. It crashed into Isabella's knees. Isabella stumbled. Vivien caught the back of her emerald dress and yanked her sideways, away from the gun. The gun fired. The mirror exploded. Both women froze as silver glass rained down around them. Vivien's ears rang. For half a breath, she saw herself in 100 broken reflections. Round face, wide eyes, smudged mascara, glass in her hair again. Still standing, Isabella dove for the gun. Vivien sat on her. Not elegantly, not gracefully, with the full authority of a woman who had spent years carrying flour sacks, lifting cake tiers, and refusing to apologize for taking up space. Isabella made a furious, strangled sound beneath her. Vivien kicked the gun under the far vanity and grabbed the purse. No, Isabella snapped, struggling. You stupid cow. Vivien stopped. The words landed old and familiar, pulled from every school hallway, every boutique dressing room, every auntie who thought concern gave her permission, every man who had mistaken size for weakness. For 1 second, the room went very quiet inside Vivien. Then she leaned down near Isabella's ear. Cows are sacred in some places, sweetheart. Choose better insults. She dug through the purse, found the phone, and held it up to Isabella's face. The screen opened on recognition. Vivien rolled her eyes. Rich people and face unlock. A blessing to crime-solving everywhere. Messages filled the screen. Most were short. Some were in code, but the newest one was painfully clear. Sniper missed. Get the car ready at loading bay. We leave before Edmund seals the hotel. Vivien's pulse kicked. A second message from Carmine sat underneath. Did anyone see you move? Isabella went still beneath her. Vivien stared at the phone, then at Isabella. Oh, honey. The lounge door opened. Tommy stood there with the crab cake tray in one hand and a gun in the other. He looked at the broken mirror, the smoke near the ceiling, the gun under the vanity, Isabella on the floor, and Vivien sitting on top of her, with her dress half undone and her hair full of glass. For the first time all night, Tommy looked genuinely unsure. Vivien lifted the phone. She knows about the window. Tommy lowered the tray. Boss is going to hate this. Tell him to join the club. By the time Vivien returned to the ballroom, Edmund was already moving toward her. He did not walk fast, but people got out of his way, like the floor itself had warned them. His eyes found the scratches on her arm first, then the glass in her hair, then the tear near the shoulder of her dress. His face became very still. Vivien recognized that stillness. Not calm. Control. "What happened?" he asked. She pulled a gun. "I sat on her. Your bathroom mirror is dead." His gaze dropped to the phone in her hand. Vivien gave it to him. "Carmine is running." Edmund read the messages. Whatever warmth had lived in him during their strange little dance vanished so completely, it felt like watching lights go out in a city. He looked toward the back of the ballroom. Carmine was gone. "Loading bay," Edmund said. Tommy nodded. "I have men sealing exits." "No," Edmund said, quietly. "I want him to believe he still has air." Vivien stepped beside him. He looked down. "No, we already did this conversation. It wasn't charming the first time. You got proof. You are done. Carmine tried to kill you while I was pressed against you on a dance floor. That puts me in the splash zone of his bad choices. It puts you under my protection." Vivien's voice softened, but only a little. "Do not make protection sound like a cage." That landed. She saw it in his eyes. For a man like Edmund, protection probably meant control, because control was the only language his world respected. Doors locked, guards assigned, routes changed, threats removed, people placed where he decided they were safest. But Vivien had not survived this night by being placed anywhere. She had survived by seeing, moving, choosing, acting. Edmund looked at her for a long moment. Then he said, "Stay on my left." Vivien exhaled. "Why?" "Because Tommy is on my right, and if anyone shoots again, I would prefer you not to make a habit of blocking bullets." That almost sounded like concern. It was strategy. "Sure." They moved through the side hallway together. Music faded behind them. The hotel changed as they left the ballroom. The gold and flowers gave way to service corridors, gray walls, steel carts, warm kitchen smells, and fluorescent lights. Vivien knew spaces like this, the hidden veins of expensive beauty. The places where staff rushed, sweated, cursed, and kept luxury standing for people who never wondered why it did not collapse. At the end of the corridor, a metal door opened into the loading bay. Cold air washed over them. Carmine Rossetti stood beside a black car, with two men near him, and a duffel bag at his feet. His wife was not with him. Maybe he did not know yet that Isabella was currently being guarded by a man holding crab cakes, or maybe he knew and had chosen himself anyway. Men like Carmine often called that survival. He turned when Edmund entered. For one strange second, nobody moved. The loading bay hummed with distant machines. Rain tapped against the open dock entrance. A truck idled outside, its headlights washing the concrete floor in pale light. Carmine smiled. It was terrible. "Edmund." There was some confusion inside. "I was going to send my driver around." "Were you?" Edmund said. Vivien stood a little behind him, close enough to see Carmine's eyes shift to her. Recognition flared, then irritation, then something uglier. "You brought the baker," Carmine said. Vivien lifted one hand, and yet no one brought manners. Carmine ignored her and looked at Edmund. "You know Dominic did this. The old man has wanted your roots for years. Dominic is eating pasta. He performs calm well." "So do you," Edmund said. "Badly tonight." Carmine's smile cracked. "You have no proof." Edmund held up Isabella's phone. The loading bay went silent. Carmine stared at it. His color changed, red, draining toward gray. "My wife is emotional. Your wife is in custody. She knows nothing. She knew about the window." Carmine's eyes flashed toward Vivien. Vivien smiled sweetly. "Bathroom chat. Very educational." Carmine's hand twitched near his jacket. Tommy lifted his gun. Edmund did not move at all. Somehow that was worse. "Why?" Edmund asked. Carmine gave a short laugh. "You ask that like you don't know. I want to hear you say it. You think everything can stay yours because men are afraid of your name. The docks, the routes, the hotel contracts, the politicians, the unions. But fear ages, Edmund. Men get tired of bowing. So you hired a sniper at a charity gala. I created an opening. You missed. Carmine's eyes flicked to Vivien again. Because she got in the way. Something in Edmund's face changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but the cold inside him became a blade. Carmine saw it and swallowed. Vivien felt a soft fear move through her. Not fear of Edmund exactly. Fear of what the room had become. The ballroom had been chaos, dressed as romance. This was something else. Concrete, guns, rain, men with old betrayals in their mouths. No music to soften it. Carmine lifted both hands slowly. Listen, we can make terms. No, Edmund said. You need the Doc family's calm. You kill me, you start fires. You started them. I can name everyone involved. You will. Carmine laughed again, but his voice shook. You think your people are clean. Half your port security was ready to turn. Your schedule, your window angles, your east wall camera rotation. You think I got all that alone? The city is full of men smiling at you while waiting for you to bleed. Edmund stepped closer. Then I will clean the city. Carmine's hand shot under his jacket. Everything happened in less than a second. Tommy shouted. One of Carmine's men reached for a weapon. Vivien flinched back against a stack of crates. Edmund moved faster than she expected, smooth and terrible, drawing his gun before Carmine had fully cleared his. 2 shots cracked through the loading bay. The sound punched the air. Carmine fell backward against the car and slid to the floor. His gun skidded across the concrete. For a moment, no one breathed. Vivien stared at Carmine's body. The red spread beneath him with quiet speed. Not like raspberry filling. Not like anything pretty, no matter how her stunned mind tried to reach for harmless comparisons. This was death, simple and final, in a grey loading bay under bad lighting. She had known what Edmund was. Everyone in the city knew, even if they pretended rumor was not knowledge. But knowing a man had violence around him and watching him use it were not the same. Her stomach turned. Her fingers went cold. The jokes disappeared from her mouth. Edmund looked back at her, not with apology, not with pride. With concern he was trying not to show. Vivien. She swallowed hard, once, twice. Then she forced herself to look at Carmine again, because looking away felt like giving the night more power than it already had. He would have shot you, she said. Yes, and maybe me. Yes. Her breath shook. She hated that. She hated that Edmund saw it, but she stood upright anyway, pressing one hand to the crate beside her. After a long moment, she said, "The cake is definitely going to cost triple now." Tommy blinked. One of the guards coughed. Edmund stared at her for half a second, and then the smallest, strangest softness entered his eyes. "Only triple. Do not test me. I'm emotional." He stepped toward her, then stopped before reaching out, as if he remembered what she had said about cages. "Can you walk?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "No, but I'm doing it anyway." "Tommy," Edmund said without looking away from her. "Clean this." "Already done." "And Leo?" "At the ballroom, keeping everyone drunk and charitable." "Good." Vivien looked toward the door back into the hotel. "We're going back in." "Yes." "After that? If we do not, everyone invents their own ending." She hated that he was right. So they returned. The ballroom received them like a room receiving a ghost and pretending not to scream. The music was brighter now, almost too bright. Guests talked too loudly. Laughter rose in strange bursts. The broken champagne tower had been cleared away, though one corner of the floor still sparkled with tiny glass crumbs. The cake remained standing near the pillar, proud and damaged, and somehow dignified. Carmine Rossetti was gone. Isabella Rossetti was gone. No one asked where. That was the most frightening part. Not the violence, not the lie, the understanding. Everyone in the room seemed to know that certain questions were doors one did not open unless one wished to be pulled through. Vivien stood beside Edmund near the cake table, while the charity chairwoman, pale and sweating under makeup, announced that dessert would now be served. Her voice trembled on the word, dessert. Vivien almost felt bad for her. Almost. A photographer approached with caution, not the gossip columnist. This one looked official and deeply regretful about his job. "Mr. Costa," he said carefully, "the cake-cutting photo?" Vivien turned to Edmund. "You still want a cake-cutting photo? The charity does. The charity has had a full evening. The charity will survive." A waiter handed Edmund a silver cake knife. Edmund looked at it, then handed it to Vivien. "You should hold it." She stared at him. "I have already handled one weapon tonight. I would prefer dessert tools only. This is a dessert tool. In your hands, I'm not sure." For 1 second, the room around them seemed to vanish again. Edmund's mouth curved. Not much, but enough for Vivien to see that the laugh from behind the pillar had not been a mistake. It was still in there somewhere, buried under all that darkness and discipline. He stood beside her and placed his hand lightly over hers on the knife. "May I?" he asked. The question was so quiet no one else heard it. Vivien did. It should not have mattered. It was only a cake knife. Only a photo. Only a hand over hers after a night when his world had nearly swallowed her whole. But the question mattered, because men like Edmund were not supposed to ask. They took, they ordered, they protected, until protection became a locked door. Yet here he was, waiting. Vivien nodded. Together, they cut into the lower tier. The knife slid through buttercream and sponge. Raspberry filling spilled across the silver blade in a bright red line. Both of them paused. Vivien looked at the filling. Edmund looked at it too. Then she whispered, "Well, that feels rude." His shoulders moved once. She looked up at him. He was trying not to laugh in front of a ballroom full of criminals, politicians, donors and enemies pretending not to be terrified. That did it. Vivien's own laugh broke loose, quiet and inappropriate and impossible to stop. Edmund lowered his head, as if adjusting his cuff, but she felt the laugh in him too. The photographer snapped the picture. That was how the room saw them. Edmund Costa, feared hotel king, standing beside the fat baker everyone had mistaken for a secret wife, both of them laughing over a bleeding cake, while half the city's underworld tried to understand what had changed. By the end of the gala, the rumor had become something larger than either of them could control. Vivien heard it in pieces as dessert was served. She saved him. No, she was planted. Old family connection. Secret engagement. Rossetti insulted her. Carmine left early. Edmund smiled. That last one caused the most fear. Not the bullet. Not the missing dock partner. Edmund smiled. Apparently that was the news that would haunt people. Vivien stayed until the final slice of cake was served, because she was a professional, and because leaving early would have felt too much like running. Edmund never stood far from her. He did not hover. He did not touch without reason, but he remained close enough that people approaching her suddenly remembered better manners. Women who had looked at her body with little knives in their eyes now praised the cake like it had saved their children. Men who might have ignored her earlier stepped aside when she passed. One even called her Mrs. Costa, before turning white and fleeing toward the bar. Vivien wanted to find that funny. She did find it funny. She also found it dangerous. Near midnight, when the last guests drifted out under the careful guidance of security, Vivien stood in the service hall beside the remaining cake equipment. Her whole body ached. Her feet were angry. Her dress had become less an outfit and more a legal dispute. The adrenaline that had carried her all night began to thin, and in the space it left behind came shaking. Not cute shaking, not dramatic trembling, the deep kind. The kind that started in the bones. She gripped the edge of the cake cart. Edmund appeared at the end of the hall as if he had been called by the weakness she wished he had missed. "You need to sit," he said. "I need to pack my cake supports and go home. You are not driving like this." Vivien laughed once. It came out thin. "Careful, Costa. That sounded like an order." "It was an observation. I can observe myself into a cab. You have glass in your hair. I have had worse in my hair. I am afraid to ask. Good instinct. He stepped closer, then stopped. Again that pause, that careful distance. It was starting to trouble her, because restraint from a man like him felt more intimate than flirting from anyone else. My penthouse is private, he said. You can clean up there. Tommy will arrange transport after. Vivien looked at him. That sounds like the opening line of a true crime episode. It is the safest room in the building. For whom? For you. She held his gaze. And if I say no, then I send guards outside the restroom while you remove glass from your hair and curse my name in peace. Vivien studied him. The ballroom lights glowed behind him. Somewhere far below, sirens whispered through the city, too distant to know if they belonged to this night or another one. Edmund Costa stood in front of her with blood on his evening, danger in his walls, and patience in his hands. She did not trust him, not fully, maybe not even halfway, but she trusted that he was trying not to become another man who decided for her. That counted for something. Fine, she said, but if your penthouse has one of those huge, sad black couches with no pillows, I'm judging you. It has two. Couches? Pillows. That is not enough pillows for a man with your problems. For the second time that night, Edmund Costa laughed under his breath, and Vivien hated how much she wanted to hear it again. The private elevator rose in silence. Not empty silence, full silence. The kind where two people stood side by side with too many things unsaid and nowhere for their hands to go. Vivien watched the floor numbers climb. Edmund watched the doors. Their reflections looked strange in the dark mirrored walls. Him tall, controlled, spotless except for the faint mark near one cuff. Her round, tired, scratched, dress broken, hair wild with glass, eyes too awake. Do you regret it? He asked quietly. She did not look at him. Saving you? Yes. The elevator hummed. Vivien thought about the red dot, the bullet, Carmine on the floor, Isabella under her, the cake knife. The way everyone had stared, the way Edmund had asked before placing his hand over hers. No, she said at last, but I reserve the right to complain forever. That seems fair. The doors opened into his penthouse. Vivien stepped out and immediately forgot the joke she had been preparing. The room was enormous, but not showy in the way she expected. No gold lions, no glass staircase, no giant portrait of Edmund looking wounded in a chair, thank God. Just dark wood, low light, wide windows, and the city spread beneath them like spilled stars. The furniture was expensive and severe. The couches did, tragically, have only 2 pillows. A long dining table stood near the windows, empty except for a bowl of oranges. Beyond the living room, a hallway led deeper into the apartment, quiet and shadowed. It did not feel like a home. It felt like a beautiful place, where sleep came only when it had permission. Edmund walked to a cabinet and took out a small medical kit. Sit. Vivien raised an eyebrow. Please, he added. She sat on the edge of the couch. Look at you. Growth. He knelt in front of her. That startled her more than the penthouse. Edmund Costa, whose name made an entire ballroom careful, knelt on one knee and opened the medical kit without a word. He took out tweezers, gauze, and a small bottle of antiseptic. Then he looked up at her. May I remove the glass? Vivien's throat tightened in a way she did not appreciate. Yes, she said. His fingers were careful in her hair. Too careful. He worked slowly, picking out tiny pieces of mirror and champagne tower and whatever else the night had thrown at her. Each shard clicked softly into a small glass dish on the table. Vivien stared at his shoulder, because looking at his face felt like a bad idea. You've done this before, she said. Yes. With glass? With wounds. That is less comforting. I know. He found a small cut near her temple and cleaned it with a touch so gentle she nearly made a sound. She swallowed it down. Her body was tired enough to confuse kindness with danger. Or maybe kindness was dangerous. Maybe that was the whole problem. After a while he said, "Your dress is torn. I noticed when it tried to leave my body during the elevator crisis. The zipper is cutting into your back." Vivien went still. He removed his hand at once. "I can call one of the female staff." She almost said yes. It would be smarter, cleaner, less charged, less like standing at the edge of a room she had no business entering. But her back hurt, her ribs hurt, her pride was exhausted, and Edmund had asked. Every time he had asked. "Just loosen it," she said. "Don't make it weird." His eyes met hers. "I will not." That sounds like something a man says right before making it weird. The corner of his mouth moved. "Turn around, Vivien." She turned carefully. The room seemed to hold its breath with her. His fingers found the broken zipper at the back of her gown. He did not tug, did not rush, did not let his knuckles brush her skin more than necessary. He worked the stuck metal free with patient little movements until the tight pressure around her ribs finally eased. Vivien inhaled. The sound came out shaky. Edmund's hands paused. "Did I hurt you?" "No," she said, eyes closing. "That's the problem." He was silent behind her. She felt the words after they left her mouth and wished briefly that the floor would open. But the floor did not. Floors never helped when you needed them. Edmund drew the edges of the gown looser, then stepped back and placed his jacket around her shoulders. Warmth settled over her. His scent came with it. Clean soap, smoke, expensive wool, and something darker she could not name. "There," he said. Vivien faced him again, holding the jacket closed. "You know, when I accepted this cake order, I thought the worst thing that could happen was humidity." His expression softened. "I am sorry." That surprised her. Not because men never apologized. They did, constantly. Usually with their mouths while their eyes blamed traffic, mothers, alcohol, women, weather, childhood, or timing. Edmund's apology was different. It was plain. No decoration, no excuse. Vivien looked down at her scratched hands. "You didn't shoot at yourself." "No, but my world touched you. It more than touched me. It grabbed me by the collar and dragged me across a dance floor. You can leave it now." She looked up. The city lights reflected in the windows behind him. For the first time all night, Edmund Costa looked almost tired, not weak, never that, but worn at the edges, as if being feared by everyone had weight, and he had been carrying it so long he no longer remembered what his hands felt like empty. "I will pay your invoice tonight," he said. "Triple. More if you ask. Tommy will take you anywhere you want. You can forget the rumors. If anyone bothers you, they will stop. You do not have to answer questions. You do not have to see me again." Vivien listened to the offer. It was good, smart, safe, or at least safer. She could go back to Sweetmouth Bakery. She could repair her dress, sleep for 12 hours, tell Kayla the evening had been terrible in a way that required pastries, and pretend Edmund Costa was just another rich client with dramatic lighting and enemies. But Carmine was dead. Isabella had tried to shoot her. Someone else inside Edmund's world had helped plan the attack. And Vivien Costa, for all her good sense, had never been able to leave a disaster half-fixed. Besides, there was another truth sitting quietly beneath all the sensible ones. She wanted to know what happened next. Maybe that made her foolish. Maybe it made her exactly who she had always been. "I'm not disappearing," she said. Edmund's gaze sharpened. "Vivien. No. Don't use my name like a warning label. I hate that. You do not understand what staying means. I understand that a man tried to kill you, his wife tried to kill me, and your ballroom is full of people who are going to wake up tomorrow pretending none of that had anything to do with them. I understand that if you send me away, people will still think I'm connected to you because you called me your guest in front of half the city and danced with me like a man in a perfume commercial. I understand that Carmine's friends may wonder what I saw. And I understand that I have not been paid yet. You will be. I know. Then why stay?" Vivien stood slowly, still wrapped in his jacket. Her feet hurt, her back hurt, her whole night hurt, but her voice was steady. "Because I want answers," she said. "Because I want my money. Because I want to know who helped Carmine aim a gun at your head while I was standing in front of it." Edmund did not move. Vivien swallowed, then added, softer, "And maybe because I'm curious what kind of man asks before touching a zipper but doesn't blink before shooting a traitor." The silence after that felt different from every silence before it. Edmund looked at her as if she had put a hand against a locked door inside him and somehow heard what was breathing on the other side. "That curiosity can get you killed," he said. Vivien gave him a tired smile. "So can bad seafood, but people still go to buffets." He stared at her. Then he laughed. Quiet. Helpless for one brief second. Almost human. Vivien's smile faded into something warmer before she could stop it. The phone on the table buzzed. Edmund picked it up, read the screen, and the softness left his face. "What?" Vivien asked. "Leo. That is the Whiskey Prince? My underboss. You say that like it sounds better." Edmund answered the call and put it on speaker. Leo's voice came through rough and tense. "Carmine's men are already restless. 2 crews didn't answer check-ins. Dominic Basso wants a meeting by noon." Edmund looked toward the windows. "Where? His restaurant?" "No," Vivien said. Both men went silent. Edmund turned to her slowly. Leo said, "Is that the baker?" Vivien stepped closer to the phone. "Yes." And the baker says no. Leo made a sound of disbelief. "Boss?" Edmund's eyes stayed on Vivien. "Explain." Vivien pulled his jacket tighter around herself and looked out at the city, at the thin, dark lines where streets met water, at the docks in the distance, where cranes stood like sleeping giants. "If you go to Dominic's restaurant after someone tried to kill you, you look like you're answering a summons," she said. "That makes you look weak, and I'm guessing weak is not your favorite outfit." Leo was silent. Edmund's gaze changed, focusing in. Vivien continued, slower now, thinking as she spoke. "Carmine betrayed you over the docks. That means the wound is there. So make the meeting there. South Docks. Not inside a restaurant where Dominic gets to sit at his favorite table and act like a king. Make him come to the place Carmine tried to steal. Show him the missing money. Show him the port security gaps. Return whatever Carmine skimmed if you have to, because nothing calms angry criminals like getting paid. Then take control of security under the excuse of cleaning up Carmine's mess." The penthouse went very quiet. Leo finally said, "She cannot be serious." Vivien looked at the phone. "I am often funny, but I am almost always serious." Leo ignored her. "Boss, she's a civilian." "She is right," Edmund said. Leo stopped speaking. Vivien looked at Edmund. He was watching her with an expression she did not know how to hold, not amusement now, not surprise. Respect, maybe. Interest, definitely. Something more dangerous than both. After a moment, he said into the phone, "South Docks, noon. Dominic comes to me." "Boss, do exactly what Vivien said." Leo was quiet long enough for Vivien to imagine his face. Then he said, very carefully, "Understood." Edmund ended the call. Vivien lifted both brows. "You're not going to argue? With a good strategy? No. That must be deeply unsettling for the men around you. Constantly." A tired laugh escaped her, small and breathless. She sat back down before her knees could embarrass her. Edmund moved to the kitchen without asking and returned with 2 cups of coffee. He gave her one and sat across from her, not beside her, as if distance was another form of respect he was teaching himself in real time. The coffee was strong, dark, and expensive enough to taste like it had opinions. Vivien wrapped both hands around the cup. "This is terrible. It is imported. That explains its confidence." He looked at her over the rim of his own cup. "You saved my life, solved part of an assassination attempt, assaulted a traitor's wife, gave doc strategy to my underboss, and insulted my coffee. I contain multitudes, yes," he said quietly. "You do." The city stretched below them, restless and glittering, carrying secrets in every window. Somewhere under those lights, Carmine's men were whispering. Dominic Basso was planning. Isabella Rossetti was deciding what truth might save her, and Vivien's bakery waited in the dark, with tomorrow's dough unmade, tomorrow's bills unpaid, tomorrow's ordinary life no longer as ordinary as it had been yesterday. She should have felt trapped. Instead, sitting in Edmund Costa's too-perfect penthouse, with glass still catching in her hair and his jacket around her shoulders, Vivien felt the first strange edge of wonder. Not safe wonder, not sweet wonder. The kind that came when a door opened in a wall you had never noticed before, and the air on the other side smelled like danger, coffee, rain, and something almost like possibility. Edmund watched her from across the low table. She watched him back. They were not lovers, not friends, not enemies. Not yet anything with a name strong enough to survive the morning. But somewhere between the red dot, the broken mirror, the bleeding cake, and the quiet cup of coffee warming her hands, Vivien understood one thing with a certainty that made her both afraid and awake. The night had not pulled her into Edmund Costa's world by mistake. It had introduced her properly. Morning came to the Costa Hotel like it was afraid to make noise. The city below Edmund's penthouse turned slowly from black to grey to a pale wash of gold, and Vivien sat near the window with a coffee she still did not respect, wrapped in a hotel robe that probably cost more than her mixer. She had not really slept. She had closed her eyes twice, maybe 3 times, but every time the room got quiet, the red dot returned. It climbed across Edmund's tuxedo. It found his throat. It found his face. Then the champagne tower exploded again, glass blooming in the air like cold fire. So she stayed awake and watched delivery trucks move through the streets far below, little white rectangles carrying bread, flowers, linen, produce, things ordinary people needed for ordinary days. Somewhere across the city, her bakery was still dark. Sweetmouth would smell like sugar and yeast and lemon cleaner. There would be unpaid bills on the counter, a cracked pink stool near the register, and a tray of croissants Kayla had shaped badly, but with enthusiasm. Vivien wanted that life. She also knew, with a tired kind of honesty, that she could not step back into it yet. Edmund came out of the hallway, wearing black slacks and a white shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. He looked like a man who had slept even less than she had, and somehow managed to make exhaustion appear threatening. He carried another coffee and placed it beside her, then sat across from her instead of too close. He had been doing that all morning, giving her space, like he had decided space was a language, and he was learning it one careful word at a time. "You look terrible," Vivien said. His mouth moved slightly. "Good morning to you as well. I'm not being mean. I'm being medically honest. You do not look rested. I was shot near. That's like being shot at, but with extra confusion." His gaze dropped to the small bandage near her temple. "You should go home. You should stop saying that like it's going to start sounding new. The docks will not be safe. Neither was your gala. At least the docks probably don't have a violin section watching me sweat." He looked toward the window, where the harbor cranes stood in the distance like dark birds waiting on the edge of the water. "Dominic will bring men. Carmine's remaining crew will be watching. The person who gave Carmine my security layout may be there." "Then it sounds like you need someone who can tell when a liar's shoes are pointed toward the door." "Vivien." "No." She picked up the coffee, took one sip, and frowned. "Still rude. This is a different blend. They're all rude. Your beans have trust issues." That almost got him. She saw the corner of his mouth try. Then the seriousness returned. "I am not used to civilians standing beside me in rooms where men make threats. I'm not used to Mafia bosses standing in my kitchen complaining about danger before breakfast, but here we are, growing as people. I did not complain. You emotionally complained." He leaned back, studying her with that quiet, sharp attention that made her feel seen in ways she had not prepared for. Vivien had spent years being noticed badly, noticed as too big, too loud, too much, too honest, too quick with her mouth, too unwilling to shrink. Edmund looked at her like none of those things were mistakes, like they were tools, like they had saved his life, because they belonged exactly where they were. That was dangerous too. A phone buzzed on the table. Edmund read the message. His expression did not change, but the air did. "Isabella is talking," he said. Vivien set down her coffee. "Voluntarily?" "Fear is a kind of volunteer work in my world. That is a dark sentence for before noon. She says Carmine bought the hotel's security schedule from someone in operations, not one of my inner men. Someone with access to gala logistics, window restrictions, staff routes, and camera rotations. So someone boring." Edmund looked at her. "Dangerous people love using boring people," Vivien said. "Nobody watches the assistant with a tablet. Nobody watches the banquet manager moving table numbers. Nobody watches the person saying the floral arch needs to shift 6 inches. The boring people can ruin your life before the dramatic ones even enter the room." "She gave a name," Edmund said. "Marcus Bell." Vivien searched her memory. The hotel had been a blur of marble, panic, and people misusing her last name, but one face came back clearly. A thin man in a grey suit near the ballroom entrance. Clipboard tucked under one arm. Hair parted too neatly. He had argued with the staff about moving the cake toward the windows. No, not argued, directed. He had said the dessert table had been moved for photographs. He had been calm when everyone else was tense. Then he had vanished after the champagne tower exploded. "The table," she said quietly. Edmund's eyes sharpened. "What?" "The dessert table was moved toward the east windows before I arrived. That's why I was arguing with your staff. They said it was for photographs. But if the cake table had stayed near the pillar from the beginning, you might not have danced near the line of fire long enough for the shot." Edmund went still. Vivien's stomach tightened. Marcus moved the cake. "Tommy," Edmund called. Tommy appeared so quickly Vivien suspected the man lived in a wall. He had changed out of his gala suit into a dark jacket, but somehow still looked like he could intimidate weather. "Find Marcus Bell," Edmund said. Tommy's face hardened. "He called out sick this morning." Vivien laughed once, without humor. "Of course he did. Nothing says innocent like sudden flu after attempted murder. Bring him alive," Edmund said. Tommy nodded and left. Vivien watched the door close. For a moment the penthouse felt too quiet. Then Edmund stood and went to a side table where a folded garment bag waited. "I had clothes sent up." Vivien narrowed her eyes. "Please tell me you did not guess my size." "I called the tailor who repairs gowns for the hotel. She took measurements from your damaged dress while you were asleep." "I wasn't asleep. While you were pretending to be asleep badly." "Fair." "I told her comfort mattered." Vivien blinked. "You told a tailor comfort mattered?" "Yes." "And she didn't faint?" "She is paid well." Vivien opened the garment bag with suspicion and found a deep red dress inside, soft fabric, wrap style, sleeves to the elbow, not some punishment tube pretending to be fashion. Beneath it were low black shoes that looked sturdy enough to survive both docks and judgment. There was no shapeless tent, no apology fabric, no sad beige. The red was rich, warm, a little dramatic, and very much alive. She touched the sleeve. "This is nice." Edmund's voice stayed even. "If you dislike it, we can find something else." "No, I like it." She cleared her throat. "Don't look proud. It's annoying. I will try to contain myself." He turned away before she changed, and that small courtesy settled into her chest with all the other small courtesies he had offered without making a speech about them. Vivien had known men who wanted medals for basic decency. Edmund just did the thing and moved on, which made the decency harder to dismiss. An hour later, she walked out of the penthouse in the red dress, black shoes, her hair pinned up as best as possible, the scratches on her arms still visible. Edmund looked at her once, and then looked again, not long enough to be rude, long enough to be honest. Vivien lifted a hand. Careful. I said nothing. You looked loudly. His voice dropped. Then I apologized loudly. She should have had a joke ready. She usually did. Instead, warmth rose in her face, and she hated him a little for making silence feel like a compliment. The South Dock smelled like salt, rain, diesel, and metal. Grey water slapped against the pilings, cranes towered overhead, shipping containers sat in long red, blue, and green rows, stacked like blocks for giants. Men stood everywhere pretending not to stare. Edmund's men watched from one side. Carmine's remaining crew watched from another. Dominic Basso arrived in a black car with 2 older guards and the calm expression of a man who had eaten pasta through an assassination attempt and found the sauce acceptable. Vivien stood beside Edmund near a long warehouse door, trying not to show how cold the wind felt under her sleeves. Leo stood to Edmund's right, dark hair ruffled by the harbor air, eyes moving constantly. He gave Vivien one doubtful look, then another slightly less doubtful look, as if he had spent the morning being angry about taking strategic advice from a baker, and was now more angry that the advice had been good. Dominic approached slowly. He was shorter than Vivien had expected, with silver hair, a soft face, and eyes that missed nothing. He stopped several feet from Edmund and looked first at him, then at Vivien. So, Dominic said, the rumor is true. Vivien sighed. If the rumor involves secret marriage, hidden bloodline, or old country prophecy, please know I am exhausted. Dominic's mouth twitched. The rumor is that you are funny. That one is true, but underappreciated. Dominic looked at Edmund. You bring her to dock negotiations? She brought me, Edmund said. The dock went quiet in a very specific way. Vivien glanced at him. That was unnecessary. It was accurate. Dominic laughed softly. I like her, Leo muttered. Everyone likes her until she starts giving orders. I heard that, Vivien said. You were meant to. Then say it with your chest, Whiskey Prince. One of Dominic's guards coughed into his fist. Edmund's face remained controlled, but Vivien could feel the amusement beside her like heat under stone. She did not look at him because if she did, she might smile, and the docks did not seem like a place where smiling was always wise. Dominic folded his hands over the top of his cane. Carmine is dead. Yes, Edmund said. His men are angry. His men were sold. Dominic's eyes sharpened. Edmund gave Leo a small nod. Leo opened a black folder and handed over copies of shipping records, altered manifests, payment trails, and names. Dominic read in silence. The wind lifted the corner of one page. His guard held it down. Carmine had moved money through 3 port companies, promised routes to a rival cartel, and offered access to sections of the harbor that did not belong to him. The betrayal was not just personal. It was expensive. In Edmund's world, expensive betrayal had the power to calm emotion fast, because everyone wanted to know whether their peace had been touched. Dominic's face changed slowly from curiosity to anger, not loud anger, older, worse. He skimmed from my side too, Dominic said. Yes, Edmund replied. I brought the records before I brought revenge. That is considerate. That is business. Dominic looked at Vivien. This was your idea? She suggested location and sequence. Edmund said. Vivien lifted one shoulder. People listen better when you show them the receipt before the threat. Dominic stared at her, then laughed again. She is not wrong. A murmur moved through the men behind him. Some of Carmine's remaining crew shifted uneasily. They had arrived expecting Edmund weakened, maybe desperate, maybe defensive. Instead, they were being shown proof that their dead boss had stolen from nearly everyone with enough power to punish the living. Edmund stepped forward. Carmine's stolen money will be returned to the affected crews by midnight. Port security will move under my direct command until every compromised guard, scheduler, and dock manager is removed. Anyone who helped Carmine can speak today and breathe tomorrow. Anyone who waits for me to find them will not enjoy my attention." The wind carried his voice over the concrete. No one spoke. Then a young man from Carmine's side stepped forward. He could not have been more than 25, with nervous hands and a bruised eye. "Bell," he said. Edmund turned toward him. "What?" "Marcus Bell, hotel operations guy. He wasn't the only one. He sent the table changes and window schedule, yeah, but the camera rotation came through port security. Man named Reeves. He's here." The silence snapped tight. Vivien saw it before anyone moved. A man near the second row, older, broad, with a grey beard and a navy jacket, began to shift backward. Not a lot, just half a step. His hand dropped toward his hip. Vivien pointed. "That one." Reeves ran. The docks erupted. Men shouted. Guns came up. Tommy moved like a shadow across concrete, fast and controlled. Leo went after Reeves from the side, swearing hard enough to make 2 dock workers flinch. Reeves ducked between 2 containers and fired one wild shot that sparked against metal. Vivien's body locked at the sound, but Edmund's hand caught her wrist and pulled her behind the warehouse corner before she could decide whether her legs worked. "Stay here," he said. Vivien stared at him. He paused, breathing hard once through his nose. "Please stay here." That word changed it. Not enough to make her happy, enough to make her listen for 10 seconds. Edmund turned back toward the containers. More shouting, a crash, then a grunt, then Leo's voice, furious and triumphant. "Got him." Vivien let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. Edmund came back into view with his gun low at his side. Reeves was dragged between the containers by Tommy and Leo, bleeding from a cut above his brow but alive. He looked at Edmund with the helpless fury of a man who had expected to be smarter than consequences. "Marcus Bell paid you?" Edmund asked. Reeves spat blood onto the concrete. "Bell didn't have that kind of money." "Then who?" Reeves looked away. Vivien studied him. His fear was real, but it was not fear of Edmund, not fully. His eyes kept flicking toward the water, toward the ships, toward something larger than the dock in front of him. Vivien stepped out from behind the warehouse wall. Edmund looked at her. She ignored him. "You're not afraid of him killing you," she said to Reeves. "You're afraid of who finds out you talked." Reeves gave her a nasty look. "You don't belong here." Vivien smiled thinly. "Men keep telling me that right before they ruin their own day." His jaw tightened. She moved closer, stopping at Edmund's side. "Carmine wanted the roots. Bell gave him the hotel setup. You gave him the camera rotations. But Carmine didn't have enough reach for the cartel transfer alone. Someone above him promised protection." Reeves said nothing. Dominic's soft voice came from behind them. "The Marzano brothers." Reeves closed his eyes. That was answer enough. Edmund's expression darkened. The name clearly meant something ugly. Leo cursed under his breath. Tommy's hand tightened around Reeves's collar. Dominic tapped his cane once against the concrete. "They have been circling the coast for 2 years. They used Carmine to open my port," Edmund said. "And if you died last night," Dominic said, "the docks would fracture by morning. Men would panic. Crews would choose sides. Marzano ships would arrive before sunset, offering peace at a very fair price." Vivien folded her arms. So Carmine wasn't the spider. He was the bug who thought he owned the web. Dominic looked delighted. "I really do like her." Edmund did not look delighted. He looked like a man quietly deciding how many lives had just become inconvenient. Vivien touched his sleeve. The movement was small. So small no one else seemed to notice. But Edmund did. His gaze dropped to her fingers, then rose to her face. "Do not go cold and silent yet," she said softly. "This is not the time for warmth. No, but it is the time for thinking before every man here starts making fear-based decisions with firearms." His eyes held hers. She could feel the docks watching them now. Not just Dominic, not just Leo, everyone. They were watching whether Edmund Costa would tolerate being corrected in public by a woman with a bakery badge still clipped to her bag. They were watching whether he would snap. Whether she was foolish, whether his restraint was weakness. Edmund slowly lowered his gun and handed it to Tommy without looking away from Vivien. "Then think," he said. The quiet that followed was different from fear. It was respect arriving before anyone had agreed to invite it. Vivien turned toward Dominic, Leo, the dock crews, the anxious men who had followed Carmine into betrayal and now stood in the wind, trying to decide how loyal they wanted to be to a dead thief. "The Marzanos wanted chaos," she said, "so don't give them chaos. Give them a locked door. Everyone here publicly accepts Edmund's temporary port security control until the stolen money is returned and the compromised people are removed. Dominic gets copies of all records. Carmine's crews keep their work if they swear clean by tonight. Anyone who waits gets treated like they chose the Marzanos. Then you send a message down the coast that the docks are boring, stable, and very expensive to interfere with." Leo stared at her. Dominic smiled like he had just tasted excellent wine. Edmund said nothing for a moment. Then he turned to the men waiting in the cold. "You heard her, and that was it." Not because everyone suddenly trusted Vivien, not because criminals became reasonable when a baker explained logistics in a red dress, but because she had given them a way to survive without looking scared. Men who would rather die than admit fear would sometimes accept structure if it came wrapped as business. One by one, the crew leaders stepped forward. Dominic first, then two of Carmine's men, then port managers, security captains, shipping supervisors. Papers were signed on the hood of a black car. Phones were checked. Names were given. Reeves was taken away. Marcus Bell was found an hour later hiding in his sister's empty condo with a suitcase full of cash and 3 passports, which Tommy reported with the weary tone of a man disappointed by predictable stupidity. By late afternoon, the South Docks had changed hands without a war. By evening, the first stolen funds were moving back through quiet channels. By night, the Marzano brothers sent no ships. The city did not know how close it had come to blood on the water. It only saw the usual harbor lights, the slow cranes, the hotel windows shining high above the streets. That was the trick of power, Vivien realized. When it worked, ordinary people never knew which disaster had been stopped before it reached them. She should have gone home then. Instead, Edmund drove her himself. No guards in the back seat, no driver, no dramatic convoy. Just Edmund behind the wheel of a black car that smelled like leather and rain, his sleeves still rolled, his face shadowed by passing streetlights. Vivien sat beside him with her shoes off, because the day had officially taken enough from her feet. "You are very quiet," he said. "I'm experiencing delayed wisdom." "What does that mean?" "It means part of me is realizing I spent the day telling criminals how to organize themselves, and should maybe be concerned about that. You prevented a dock war. I also forgot to eat lunch, so my judgment is complicated." He glanced at her. "There is food at your bakery?" "If Kayla didn't stress-eat the almond croissants, yes." "Will she be there?" "Probably. She quits in emergencies and returns when there are pastries. It's our rhythm." Sweetmouth Bakery looked small after the hotel, small after the penthouse, small after the docks. Its pink sign flickered over the sidewalk. One letter had gone dim last winter, so at night it sometimes looked like sweet moth, which Vivien had decided was charming in a financially concerning way. The front window still held painted hearts from a wedding promotion she had forgotten to remove. Inside, the lights were on. Vivien stopped at the door. Through the glass, Kayla was asleep with her cheek on the counter beside an open box of croissants. A handwritten sign had been taped to the register, closed due to cake trauma. "Come back tomorrow." Vivien's laugh came out soft and sudden. Edmund looked through the window. "That is your assistant? That is my emotionally fragile raccoon. She waited for you." Vivien's smile gentled. "Yeah, she did." She unlocked the door quietly. The bell jingled. Kayla shot upright, hair wild. eyes huge. You're alive. Mostly. Kayla looked at Edmund and froze so completely she seemed to forget how bones worked. Vivien pointed at her. "Do not scream," Kayla whispered. "Is that Edmund Costa?" "No, it's a very committed cake reviewer." Edmund looked at the croissant box. "May I?" Kayla made a faint squeaking sound. Vivien sighed. "He means the pastry, Kayla." Edmund took an almond croissant with more caution than he had used around several armed men. He tasted it. His eyes changed. Vivien watched him. "Well?" He took another bite. "This is better than the gala cake." Kayla gasped. Vivien placed a hand over her heart. "That is the meanest compliment I have ever received. The gala cake was excellent. Too late. Damage done. I'll survive, but I'll bring it up during arguments. I expect nothing less." Kayla looked between them with growing horror and delight. "Are you two?" "No," Vivien said. "Not yet," Edmund said. Vivien turned slowly. Kayla grabbed the croissant box and retreated toward the kitchen like a woman fleeing a blessed event. The bakery went quiet. Edmund stood near the display case, too tall and dark and expensive for the room, and yet somehow he fit there better than he had fit inside his penthouse. Maybe because the bakery had warmth he did not know how to make. Maybe because flour on the counter and sugar in the air softened the edges of him. Or maybe Vivien was tired enough to imagine dangerous things kindly. "You cannot say not yet in my bakery," she said. "Why?" "Because the muffins will gossip." He looked around. "They seem discreet." "They are not." His amusement faded slowly. What remained was something steadier. Vivien walked behind the counter, needing distance, needing the comfort of familiar wood under her palms. "I meant what I said yesterday. I'm not part of your world. I know. I don't want men with guns outside my bakery scaring customers. You will not have them where customers can see." "Edmund." He stopped, listened. She let out a breath. "I mean it. I do not want to be swallowed by your life. I worked hard for this place. It's mine. The ovens are dramatic. The sink leaks if you insult it, and one of the display lights flickers when it rains. But it is mine. I'm not giving that up to become some woman people whisper about in hotel corners. You should not give it up. And I don't want protection that turns into permission." His expression grew still, but not cold. "No. I need you to understand that before this becomes anything more than adrenaline and bad decisions. It already is more." The words landed gently, which somehow made them harder to avoid. Vivien looked down at the counter. There was flour in a thin line near her wrist. She rubbed it with her thumb and laughed quietly. "We met because people thought I was your secret wife. Yes, you lied and said I was your guest. Yes, I saved your life because I wanted to get paid. I am aware. I sat on a woman with a gun. Tommy has described it 3 times. She deserved it. I never doubted that." Vivien looked up. "This is insane. Yes. You are dangerous. Yes. I am not easy." His eyes softened in a way that made the whole bakery feel smaller. "No, you are not. That was your chance to argue. I have no interest in making you smaller, so I can call you simple." The breath left her slowly. There were moments in life, Vivien thought, when a person said something plain and the world still shifted beneath it. This was one of those moments. No flowers, no music, no ballroom watching. Just a bakery after midnight, a tired woman in a red dress, a dangerous man with powdered sugar on his fingers, and a sentence that touched every old bruise no one could see. Edmund stepped closer, then stopped on the other side of the counter, always stopping, always waiting. "Vivien Costa," he said quietly, "I do not know how to be harmless. I didn't ask you to be harmless. I do not know how to be ordinary. Good. Ordinary men ask for discounts." That pulled a small laugh from him, but his eyes stayed serious. "I can promise you this," he said. "I will not own you. I will not hide you. I will not decide your life and call it care. If danger comes near you because of me, I will stand between it and you, but I will not lock the door behind me unless you ask me to." Her throat tightened. Very dramatic, she whispered. Yes, probably needs editing. Probably. She came around the counter slowly. He did not move until she stood in front of him. The bakery lights hummed overhead. Outside, a car passed through a puddle, sending water whispering along the curb. From the kitchen, Kayla made an extremely fake coughing sound, and then went silent again. Vivien ignored her. She looked up at Edmund. Ask? His voice lowered. May I kiss you? There it was. The thing every dark story forgot. The thing every powerful man in every whispered rumor was supposed to take because wanting was treated like permission. Edmund asked, and because he asked, the answer belonged fully to her. Vivien reached up, caught the front of his shirt the same way she had grabbed his tuxedo on the dance floor, and smiled. Careful, she said. Last time I held your collar, someone shot at us. This time, Edmund said, bending closer, I checked the windows. She laughed against his mouth before she kissed him. It was not soft at first. They were too tired for perfect softness, too alive for careful pretending. It was relief and wonder, and the last trembling edge of fear turning into something warm. Edmund kissed like he did everything else, with control fighting hunger, with restraint held so tightly it almost shook. Vivien kissed him back with both hands in his shirt and one foot planted firmly on her own bakery floor, because if she was going to kiss a mafia boss, she would do it in a place that smelled like butter and belonged to her. Kayla sobbed once from the kitchen. Vivien broke the kiss and shouted, I heard that. I'm happy for you, Kayla shouted back. And scared. Healthy response, Edmund said. Vivien laughed, and this time the sound felt easy. The weeks that followed did not become simple. Men like Edmund did not have simple weeks. The Marzano brothers tested the harbor once, and lost enough money to become thoughtful. Dominic Basso sent flowers to the bakery with a card that said, for the woman who saved lunch from becoming war, which Vivien kept because it was ridiculous, and the flowers were expensive. Leo came by Sweetmouth twice, once to complain that Edmund had become impossible since listening to her, and once to buy a whiskey chocolate cake he claimed was for a meeting but ate in his car. Tommy installed new locks on the bakery's back door, and then asked, with great seriousness, whether crab cakes were always served cold, or if the gala kitchen had insulted him personally. Vivien kept working. She baked wedding cakes, birthday cupcakes, lemon bars, and apology pies for men who did not deserve forgiveness, but had wives who liked cinnamon. Customers came more often after the gossip photos spread. Some came for pastry. Some came hoping to see Edmund. Vivien raised prices for anyone who asked invasive questions and called it a curiosity tax. Edmund came in late at night when the bakery was closed. Sometimes he brought court documents, sometimes he brought nothing, and simply sat at the little table near the window while Vivien finished frosting cakes. He learned how to drink normal coffee. Not happily, but with effort. Vivien learned that he hated blueberries, trusted few men, loved old jazz, and had once wanted to become an architect before his father died and left him an empire full of wolves. He learned that Vivien sang badly when measuring flour, cried at dog rescue videos, and could turn terrifyingly quiet when someone tried to underpay staff. They argued often about security, about sugar, about Edmund sending a driver without asking, about Vivien refusing to use the driver out of principle, and then calling him from a gas station because her van made a noise she described as demonic jazz. But the arguments did not feel like cages. They felt like doors being built with handles on both sides. 1 month after the gala, the charity committee asked Vivien to recreate the 5-tier cake for a private donor dinner, because apparently trauma became branding if wealthy people liked the photos. Vivien agreed for triple the original price, plus a written apology for the champagne tower, plus a clause stating that no dessert table would be moved without her approval. Edmund read the contract and said nothing for a full minute. Then he looked at her and said, "Marry me." Vivien dropped a spatula into a bowl of buttercream. Kayla screamed from the register. Edmund closed his eyes briefly. That came out wrong. "You think?" Vivien said, one hand pressed to her chest. "I was negotiating cake placement, you emotionally reckless man. I did not mean now." "Oh, good. Very calming. I meant someday." The bakery went silent except for the mixer humming softly on the counter. Vivien looked at him. He looked back at her, not cold, not commanding, not even fully certain. Edmund Costa, who had faced bullets with less visible fear than this, stood in her bakery, looking like the answer mattered more than his pride. "Someday," she repeated. "Yes? You're asking for someday? I am asking if someday is a door you would consider leaving unlocked." Vivien stared at him. Then slowly, she smiled. That was the trouble with dangerous men who listened. They became hard to dismiss. "Someday," she said, "you can ask better." His face changed. Hope on Edmund was nearly devastating. "And if I ask better, then I might answer better," Kayla whispered. "I'm going to pass out." "No one is passing out near the macarons," Vivien said. The donor dinner happened in the same ballroom where the red dot had found Edmund's face. This time the dessert table stood exactly where Vivien wanted it, near the stone pillar and far from the windows. The champagne tower had been replaced by low trays because Vivien had declared tall glass structures emotionally immature. The cake was perfect. 5 tiers, gold leaves, raspberry filling, buttercream roses. Not identical to the first one. Better, guests still whispered when Edmund entered with Vivien beside him. Let them. She wore deep green this time, not because anyone chose it for her, but because she liked how it looked against her skin. Edmund stood at her side, one hand near her back but not touching, until she leaned into him first. Across the room, Dominic raised a glass. Leo rolled his eyes and ate cake before dinner. Tommy watched the windows and held a plate of crab cakes with the grim expression of a man revisiting history. The photographer asked for a cake-cutting photo. Vivien took the knife. Edmund placed his hand near hers, not over it. He waited. She looked at him and lifted an eyebrow. "You may." His hand covered hers. Together, they cut into the cake. Raspberry filling touched the silver blade again, bright and red and dramatic as ever. This time, Vivien did not flinch. Edmund did not look away. They both smiled, before the photographer even asked. Later, when the dinner ended and the ballroom emptied, Vivien stayed behind to check the cake stand, because love was lovely, but rental equipment still had to be returned. Edmund walked up beside her, silent as always. "You are inspecting it like it betrayed you," he said. "It has not betrayed me yet. That's why we inspect." He looked toward the windows, then the pillar, then the floor, where the champagne tower had once exploded. "Do you ever wish you had walked out that night?" Vivien thought about it. She thought about the elevator, the broken zipper, the whispers, his hand held out for one paid dance. She thought about the red dot, the bullet, the mirror, the loading bay, the docks, the first terrible coffee in his penthouse, the first kiss in her bakery. She thought about fear, not as a stop sign, but as the body's dramatic way of saying something important was happening. "No," she said. "But I still think your security zone was blocking my dessert table." Edmund laughed softly. It was not the surprised laugh from behind the pillar anymore. It was easier now. Still rare, still his, but no longer locked so deep. Vivien turned to him. "You know, when people ask how we met, we need a better answer. We met over cake. You lied in a ballroom and got me shot near. I paid you triple. You did. I checked the windows before kissing you. That helped." He stepped closer, stopping only when her hand rose to his chest. Not pushing him away, just resting there, feeling the steady beat beneath her palm. He waited, because that was who he was learning to be with her. A man who could command docks, silence rooms, frighten enemies, and still wait for one woman's yes. Vivien looked up at him, at the dangerous face, the tired eyes, the almost smile that belonged more to her now than to any room full of frightened men. "Dance with me," she said. "There is no music. There was almost no common sense last time. We managed." He offered his hand. She took it. They danced slowly in the nearly empty ballroom, between the stone pillar and the dessert table, beneath chandeliers that no longer felt like frozen rain. There were no whispers now, no camera flashes, no red dot, no bullet waiting across the street, just Edmund's hand in hers, careful and warm, and Vivien's red-painted mouth curving as he let her lead the first turn. Outside, the city kept its secrets. Inside, the cake stood steady. And Edmund Costa, who had spent half his life making powerful men afraid, lowered his head toward the woman who had once told him to move before he got himself killed, and whispered, "You are still the most dangerous person in the room." Vivien smiled against his shoulder. "Good," she said. "Then maybe next time, people will think twice before touching my buttercream."